Hi, I'm Josh, the dad of hobbies. Today's hobby, John Candy. I love John Candy, and it's weird to say that because I didn't know who John Candy was, not really, before he passed. John was born in 1950. He passed in 1994. He didn't make it to his 44th birthday, but in 1984, I was 7, or in fact, when he passed, I was still 6. Um, and so it's a very odd feeling now, especially as an adult, but even growing up, being obsessed with all the pop culture things I am, missing a celebrity that I barely knew. Um, Robin Williams, as by way of comparison, is somebody every generation I think that's alive today misses. But I saw Robin. I got to know. I mean, not met him, but I got to know who he was through his work. Right. I was around for a lot of Robin. Um, but John Candy, by the time I got around to seeing even the little scene he has in Home Alone, let alone Uncle Buck, or of course Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, silly things like him in National Lampoon's Vacation, all of that was history to me by the time I got to it. Um, but I think John Candy is one of the most timeless actors that we've ever had, and there's a sense of relevancy, I think, to his work even today. And today he is my hobby because uh, last night I got the privilege of seeing the new John Candy documentary, John Candy, I Like Me, which was directed by Colin Hanks, son of Tom Hanks, produced by Ryan Reynolds, John Candy's children, Jennifer and Christopher, as well as several others, Amazon as well. And they're touring it right now. So it premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival a couple weeks ago, and right now it's on tour, and it'll be available to all on Amazon on October 10th. But I got to not only see the film on this tour, but as part of the tour, there was a discussion panel afterwards with Ryan Reynolds, Chris Candy, and Rob McElroy joined as well. The whole thing was moderated by Dan Pasternak, who's a wonderful interviewer and comedian, comedy historian. The whole event was fantastic, right? The footage and the way that the documentary was put together was astounding. There's been a lot of documentaries lately, right? With just the zeitgeist is to get the inside scoop on a lot of things. Some of them have unearthed some not so pleasant things of our nostalgia, but in this case, this was nostalgia fueled in exactly the right way. And so you got to see John Candy's work starting, of course, well, back in SCTV, Second City, all the way up through, sort of the end of his career as he passed. But more importantly, you got to hear from his contemporaries, you got to hear from people that worked with him, you got to hear from his children, and you got to see a side of John that everybody knew, and it sort of validated how we all feel about him if you're a fan of his work, while still showing the deeper meaning, the heart behind the man. And it's certainly one thing to feel that there's a celebrity who's true to themselves, and I think that's true in a lot of John's work, but there's also a sense of that validation when you see it from all of the other people around him. Sometimes you don't want to meet your heroes, and you can't ever meet John Candy, obviously now, but this was a way to meet him, and it was very, very heartwarming and validating. And then to hear, after the film from his son directly and some of those memories, we got to hear a lot of the things that went into the film and the way that Ryan Reynolds sort of described it, who has been very obsessed with John Candy and wanted to make this film for years. This is the last John Candy film. And that's sobering to say, but it's also really nice to say, 30 years after he's gone, we have a John Candy film. I love John Candy's work. In fact, my first recollection of being able to see his work was Spaceballs. And the event, I knew that Ryan and Chris were going to be there. So I actually made a balloon, Bartholomew, of Spaceballs from, for Chris. And I didn't get a chance to give it to him, obviously. But Chris, if you're watching, this is for you. Feel free to come pick it up. I also, because Ryan was there, made him a Deadpool balloon. See, even the dog likes John Candy. the Spaceballs, character was just funny and mostly comic relief, and obviously that was the point of the film. But you go watch that, and then you go watch Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, right? Or Uncle Buck, certainly, right? And there's a depth to John Candy's work that I think is, as I mentioned before, timeless, certainly, um, but also still very cognizant, very, very subtle and present. And I don't know. It's just he is. I think he was one of a kind. Um, if you've never seen any of John Candy's work, or you only know him fleetingly, I urge you to go watch some of his films, and certainly watch this documentary. As I said, I think it comes out Amazon October 10th. Um, or if you truly, if you get the chance, go do one of these tours. They're still doing them for the next couple weeks, wherever they might be. You could just Google it and find where they are. Um, but John Candy is definitely a hobby of mine, and I want as many people as possible to enjoy his work that haven't. If you've got kids, introduce them to his films. I think that there's a new generation waiting to hear and see John Candy, and certainly in a time where there's a lot of extremism of any capacity, right? Watching something like John Candy's work, and watching him as heart-filled and as big as he was, and I don't mean physically, I mean his personality, right? His exuberance, his love of both the film industry and the art of acting and the people around him. I think it's very much needed, and I definitely recommend anybody who hasn't seen his work, please do so. So that's it. That's today's hobby, John Candy. Thanks for watching. Feel free to like, follow, subscribe to see what hobby I get into next. Thanks so much.